Anneliese Dodds, MEP for the South East of England. Last Thursday, 7th of May, was clearly a poor night for Labour. Do you believe it's a poor night for the EU as well?
I don't think we know exactly what the outcome will be until we find out precisely what this Conservative government is saying it will do, particularly around the renegotiation of Britain's relationship with the EU. We haven't had many clues about that. Even in the run-up to the election, it wasn't obvious what exactly Cameron said he wanted changed and whether he was going to have the support to do that within the EU. So I think we have to wait and see, really, in terms of the impact for the EU as a whole.
Do you believe that Mr Cameron's hand was forced by UKIP? UKIP didn't do very well on the night either, but it would appear that they have got, by and large, what they wanted, namely the upcoming referendum in 2017. Do you think they forced his hand?
I think to an extent UKIP did force his hand, but I think also many members of the Conservative Party in the House of Commons as well, and he wasn't really in control of his party. Obviously the Conservatives now do have a majority, but it's not that big a majority, so I hope that the kind of sensible voices will prevail and not those people who are not just extreme within the Conservative Party but pretty extreme in relation to British public opinion as well.
If you were to be asked, and if there were a referendum tomorrow, do you feel that the British people would vote to stay or go?
I think they probably would vote to stay, but I think they need to have more information about exactly what the EU is doing. I don't think we've had a high quality debate about this within Britain for quite a long time. So I'm hoping to look at it with a silver lining that the referendum campaigns from the different parties will actually enable people to find out more about what the EU is doing and whether they want to stick with it or not.
And looking at it from Scotland's perspective, don't you think it's a little strange, because I must say I certainly do, that they voted to stay in last year, and then the SNP rode roughshod over Labour, and I suppose these sort of things do happen, but now it would appear that they are tied to the Conservatives and they may be leaving the EU. How do you feel they feel?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of Scottish voters will be fairly upset about what's happened. The SNP effectively promised to them, you can vote for us and you'll get a Labour government. Actually, obviously, what happened was the opposite. And this was very significant in England. I had a lot of people saying to me on the doorstep, and I was touring right around the southeast over the last few weeks, people saying, we're very concerned because the Conservatives have said to us that Labour will be led all the time by the SNP. Now, of course, Labour wasn't going to be led by the SNP, but that was the message that came through. So we've seen a lot of division over the last few weeks. I think we've got to look at how we can heal those divisions over the weeks and months to come, because I don't want us to have a fractured Britain, and I want us to have a Britain that's still playing a leadership role within the EU as well.
And from Labour's own perspective, Anneliese, I can't remember a more disappointing result, I would say, for Labour since 1992 election. How are you going to reform and regroup?
It obviously is very disappointing. I think we had a number of great candidates and a lot of activists out this time. 200,000 people campaigning for Labour at these elections. And while it is difficult to see a positive side, I think we have to recognise that's a massive increase in political mobilisation in Britain, more than we've ever had around an election ever. So we need to show those people that there is hope, that they can campaign for a more progressive future for our country. And let's face it, there were actually a lot of people who did vote Labour this time, not enough to give Labour a majority, but we need to keep our promise with them as well into the future.